Hi Year 6, in maths today we're going to be looking at multiplying fractions by fractions and fractions by whole numbers.
Today we're moving on to some work to do with fractions, so it's important that you know the definitions of these words. Pause the video, have a look at each word and find out the meaning if you're unsure. So when we're multiplying 1/3 by a half, we can think of it as a third of a half or as a half of a third. So here I've shaded in 1/3 of the shape, and now I'm going to halve it and shade half of that third. Instead of 1/3, now my shaded shape is actually 1/6, and 1/6 is the answer. Here is another way of showing that 1/6 is half of 1/3. So let's have a look at our fractions to see how we got this answer. The rule is numerator times numerator, then denominator times denominator. So here we have 1/3 times 1/4. So I can imagine my third being split into quarters, and I'm going to shade a quarter of that third. Instead of thirds, I now have twelfths, so my answer is 1/12. We can also see this when we follow our numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator rule. 1 times 1 is 1, and 3 times 4 is 12. Here we can also see that 1/12 is a quarter of 1/3. Here's an example to have a go at. Remember to follow the rule, numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. 2 times 1 is 2, and 8 times 4 is 32, so well done if you got 2 over 32. However, we want to give our answers in the simplest form, and it is possible to simplify this fraction. If we divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2, our answer would be 1/16. Have a go at this one, but remember to give your answer in its simplest form. So 3 times 6 is 18, and 6 times 4 is 24, but we can simplify our answer. When we are simplifying, it is often tempting to divide by 2, but here when we divide by 2, we do not get the fraction in its simplest form. We need to divide again, this time by 3, because 3 goes into 9 3 times, and 3 goes into 12 4 times, so the simplest answer is 3/4. The quickest way to simplify is to look for the highest common factor that goes into both the numerator and the denominator, and 6 is the highest number that will go into 18 and 24, so if we divide them both by 6, we get 3/4 straight away. So as well as learning how to do a fraction times a fraction, we can learn how to do a fraction times a whole number, which is also known as an integer. 1/4 times 2 is 2 lots of 1/4, so 1/4 add 1/4 is 2/4. But remember, we want to give our fraction in its simplest form, so if we divide by 2, our answer would be 1/2. We can visualise this by thinking about 2 lots of quarters, so here 1/4 doubled makes 2/4, and we can see that this is equivalent to half of our shape. Looking at our numbers, we can work out how we got our answer. So the rule is you do the numerator times the integer and the denominator stays the same. So 1 times 2 is 2 and the 4 stays the same, and this can be simplified to 1/2. We can think of 2/8 times 3 as 3 lots of 2/8. So when we're adding fractions, we do 2 add 2 add 2, which is 6, and our denominator stays the same, so we would get 6/8. But if we follow the rule, we can keep the denominator the same and do the numerator times the integer, and we get the same answer. And remember, we always want to give our answer in the simplest form. So if we divide our answer by 2, we get 3/4. Have a go at this one. Remember to follow the rule, numerator times integer over denominator. 5 times 3 is 15, and remember we keep the denominator the same as 12, so well done if you got 15/12. Well done if you simplified your answer to 5/4. However, we don't want to leave our answer as an improper fraction, where the numerator is larger than the denominator. We want to change this to a mixed number. So here we can see we've got 5/4, which is made up of 4/4 and 1/4. 4/4 is equivalent to 1 whole, so we've got 1 whole and 1/4 all together. Have a go at this one and see if you can give your answer as a mixed number with the fraction in its simplest form. So we keep the denominator the same, and 3 times 6 is 18. However, we could simplify this to 6 over 4, or 3 over 2, and then give our answer as 1 and 2/4, or even better, 1 and 1/2. For a challenge, we can have a go at timesing a mixed number by an integer, and there are two ways to do this. The first way is to partition, so we do the whole number times the integer first. 2 times 2 is 4. Next, we do 2 lots of 3/4. We know 2 times 3 is 6, and we keep the 4 the same. Next, we need to add these together, so we've got 4 and 6/4 here. However, this is an improper fraction, so we know that 4 goes into 6 once with 2 left over, so we add on that 1, which makes 5, and instead of 2/4, we can simplify it to 1/2. The second way to do this is by turning our mixed number into an improper fraction. So here we've got 2 wholes, which is 4/4 and 4/4, and 3/4 as well. So we can do 2 times 4, which is 8, and add on that 3/4. So altogether we have 11/4. If we times this by 2, we do 2 lots of 11, which makes 22, and we keep our denominator the same, which is 4. Again, we have an improper fraction which we want to change to a mixed number. Here we know that 4 goes into 22 5 times, but there are 2 left over, which would be 2 over 4. But we can simplify that to 1/2, so both methods give us the answer 5.5. If you're up for a challenge, have a go at this one. You can pick either method or try both to check your answers. So using method 1, we know that 1 times 4 is 4, and 3/8 times 4 is 12/8, which we can simplify and turn to a mixed number, making 1.5. So just like the one before, our answer is 5.5. We can check our answer using method 2. So we know that 1 and 3/8 is the same as 11 over 8, and when we multiply this by 4, we get 44 over 8. We can change this improper fraction to a mixed number because we know that 8 goes into 44 5 times, and there are 4/8 left over, which can be simplified to 1/2. So we know our answer is 5.5. So our key rules to remember are, for fraction times fraction, we do numerator times numerator, and then denominator times denominator. For example, with 1/2 times 1/4, we do 1 times 1, which is 1, and 2 times 4, which is 8. And the rule for a fraction times an integer is numerator times integer, and the denominator stays the same. So if we had 2/4 times 3, we do numerator times integer, 2 times 3, which is 6, and the denominator would stay the same, which is 4. And this can be turned to a mixed number, which would be 1 and 1/2. Well done, Year 6. Remember that you can draw diagrams as well as learning the rules to help you work out your answers.